Welcome. Okay, so we're jumping right in today looking at something that, well, it really blew up the headlines recently. We're talking about those really intense comments from Robert De Niro about Donald Trump. But just to be clear, this isn't about the politics itself.
No, not at all. We're actually using this moment, this flashpoint, really, as a kind of case study. It's a window, you could say, into the huge psychological pressure people are under, that ongoing emotional state so many have been navigating for years now.
Exactly. So what we want to do is really unpack the mechanics here, the emotional mechanics. Why does this kind of celebrity talk, which is, let's face it, pretty raw and unfiltered, why does it hit such a nerve with so many people?
And what does it tell us about how people stay resilient, or try to, when political stress just becomes part of the background noise day in, day out?
Yeah, that chronic feeling.
And if you really boil it down, take away the specific names, the events, what you're left with is something quite primal. De Niro's core line was, "You have to fight. There's no other way to face a bully." That phrase, it's more than just politics, isn't it? It taps into this really deep collective feeling, a sense of struggle against something oppressive or perceived as oppressive.
Okay, so let's get into that resonance, this whole idea of the bully narrative. The sources we looked at point out how De Niro framed it a classic bully situation. And he mentioned those millions joining protests like No Kings against what they see as authoritarian moves.
And what's really interesting there, psychologically speaking, is the interplay between anger and fear. Anger is what you see, right? It's the action, the outward reaction.
Sure.
But often simmering underneath all that sustained, widespread outrage, there's usually a deeper collective fear.
Fear of what specifically?
Well, it could be fear of losing stability, or fear about democratic norms slipping away, or even just fundamental freedoms. Anger might be the fuel that gets people moving, but often fear is the engine keeping that tank topped up.
And, okay, so for people who are living with that sort of chronic, low-level fear, that feeling of being kind of helpless, hearing someone really prominent like De Niro just let loose, like that must provide this huge release, right? A collective catharsis.
Definitely. It's a powerful moment of validation. That feeling of, okay, I'm not going crazy here. Someone else sees this threat, this danger, and they're putting into words the anger I feel, but maybe can't express that way.
Yeah, I'm not the only one.
But then you have to ask, is that catharsis actually healthy in the long run? Or does it just kind of keep everyone perpetually keyed up, ready for the next wave of outrage?
That's a good question. Like, does it solve anything or just vent pressure?
Exactly. Catharsis gives you that immediate relief, like opening a release valve on a pressure cooker. But if the underlying source of the stress, the heat, is still there, you just end up back in the boiler room eventually. Feels good for a moment. Sure, validation is powerful, but it doesn't necessarily build lasting resilience.
Okay, that distinction is really important. It brings us right to the cost of it all, the price of staying constantly outraged. Because even if you feel the cause is completely justified, staying in that high-intensity emotional state, it takes a real toll, right? Mentally, even physically.
Oh, absolutely. The sources are pretty clear on this. Constant outrage basically becomes chronic stress. And you can see the physiological effects. Anger gives you a burst of energy. It's like a jolt of adrenaline, maybe some caffeine mixed in. Yeah, gets you fired up.
But when you're wired like that all the time, your system never really gets a chance to reset, to come back down to baseline.
And the result is just feeling frazzled constantly.
Yeah, like a perpetually racing heart, maybe.
Yeah.
Your mind is buzzing, anxious, and eventually you get emotional overflow. You see it everywhere, right? People can't unplug. There's this sense of dread, maybe, or being hyper alert online, or just walking down the street. It stops being just political disagreement and turns into this high-stress way of life driven by the political climate. Wow. And then there's the rhetoric itself, isn't there? It puts this almost impossible demand on regular folks. You're constantly hearing from leaders, activists, whoever, stay angry. We need that energy. But at the same time,
stay hopeful. You need hope to actually work for change.
Right. It's a total paradox. How are you supposed to sustain that corrosive energy of fury while also holding on to the positive, constructive energy you need to build something better? It sounds exhausting just thinking about it.
It is exhausting, and it leads straight to burnout. You end up, maybe wasting energy yelling at strangers online.
Oh, yeah, arguing with someone using, like, Comic Sans and their political meme.
That chuckles lightly. Exactly. Or getting sucked into these endless comment wars. It's a classic sign of being constantly revved up, but having nowhere truly productive to channel that massive energy.
Okay, so connecting that fatigue back. The fight against the bully isn't just out there, it's in here too. Like trying to keep your own peace while staying engaged.
That's a huge part of it. Preserving your own sanity, your own well-being, while still participating in the struggle. And if we look beyond the exhaustion, beyond the big macro problems, we have to ask, how do people find a way through? Which brings us to reclaiming some control, that micro-macro dynamic.
Right, and this is where it gets really practical, I think, because De Niro's message, that emotional call to fight back, it applies way beyond just Washington politics, doesn't it? It's about standing up to any kind of manipulation, any bullying, anywhere in your life.
Precisely. The sources really emphasize how this big political dynamic resonates because we recognize micro versions of it in our own lives. Think about that no king's protest language. It implies needing to push back against unfair structures, right? That's people trying to assert agency on a big scale.
So you're saying if someone at work is always trying to, I don't know, gaslight you or control the conversation, or maybe in a family situation, or even a community meeting, that feeling is basically the same as the national one. Someone trying to take away your voice, your autonomy.
The core feeling, yes. That sense of someone trying to dominate or invalidate you. The fundamental human need that gets triggered is the desire to reclaim control, to assert your agency, especially when things feel chaotic or overwhelming.
So the public reactions, the protest, even the intense language.
Yeah.
It's people collectively saying, hold on, I refuse to be powerless here. I get to decide how I respond.
Yeah, I'm drawing a line.
That internal pushback then.
Yeah.
That decision to find your voice against a force that feels overwhelming. That's the core of resilience here, moving from just feeling fear or rage to actually doing something, even if it's just deciding on your own stance.
Yes, it's shifting towards actionable self-determination. And this idea of agency, it's crucial because it also helps explain why figures like De Niro can amplify these emotions so powerfully.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the whole idea of authenticity.
Ah, right. Why do these kinds of emotional outbursts seem to stick with people more than, say, a carefully worded statement from a politician?
Well, celebrities, unlike politicians often, aren't usually bound by the same rules of diplomacy, are they? They can speak more like angry citizens, like members of the community just letting off steam, not officials trying to balance 5 different interests.
They offer that raw, messy emotion.
Exactly. And the sources suggest the public is kind of hungry for that right now, maybe tired of overly polished, focus-grouped speeches. So that rawness, even if it's a bit rough around the edges, even if it's aggressive, it connects because it feels real.
It gives people permission, maybe. Permission to feel their own anger or frustration without having to apologize for it.
Yes, it validates that shared, unfiltered feeling. When someone prominent taps into that nerve, it can feel like they're giving power back to individuals who felt maybe isolated in their own feelings.
But circling back to resilience, that validation is helpful, but does that high-octane authenticity come with a cost, too? Can it just feed the outrage cycle if it's not channeled?
It certainly can. It provides that initial spark, that validation, but for sustained resilience, for actually navigating the stress long term, you need more than just shared anger. It has to connect to purposeful action that reinforces your own sense of agency.
Okay, so let's try to pull the main threads together here from our look at the sources. We've seen how this rhetoric reflects deep emotional divisions, lots of stress, but the underlying theme really seems to be about resilience, about finding ways to move past fear by demanding or taking action.
Yeah, the act of fighting back itself, asserting that agency, becomes a way to process the chronic stress, rather than just letting it wash over you or consume you.
So thinking about you, the listener, navigating this world full of polarizing news and these constant calls to feel or do something, what's the takeaway?
Well, I think the key insight, looking at how these emotional fuels work, is this. Anger can be necessary. It can be a powerful fuel when you're up against something you see as unjust or manipulative or bullying. It gets you started. But compassion, that's the engine that keeps you going for the long haul. And I mean compassion for yourself, first and foremost, acknowledging the toll it takes, and also compassion for the possibility of finding a better way forward. You need the energy burst from anger, perhaps, but you need sustained self-care, maybe community care, to keep moving without completely burning out. That's how you maintain resilience in this kind of high-stress world.
That really reframes it, doesn't it? The goal isn't just to win the fight, whatever that means, but to keep your capacity to fight or to engage without losing yourself in the process.
Well put. Thanks for exploring this with us today, really digging into the emotional side of such a charged public moment. Yeah, thank you for listening. And maybe here's a final thought to chew on. As you take in political news or any strong rhetoric, maybe pause and ask yourself not just, is this true? But also, what's the emotional cost here? Is this fueling my ability to act or just adding to my fatigue? Could be worth a little internal investigation. Maybe even watch the Niro movie tonight. For research purposes, of course. Light chuckle. Goodfellas, perhaps.
Why not? We'll catch you next time for another look at the things that shape our world.